So welcome everyone. I'm Richard Corbin, President of Downtown Independent Democrats. We're taking a brief break tonight from the national madness. We can take a little deep breath and focus today on the first of 8 local races that are actually going to be held next year. These races are going to be incredibly important in determining how we recover from the pandemic and how we deal with the deep issues that we all know the city continues to face. City Council District 1 covers the largest portion of the DID area and one that we in DID play an important role. So we're going to begin there. That's tonight. Next month, Monday, November 9th, we're going to host candidates for City Council Districts 2 and 3. We also have forums planned for all the city and borough-wide races. And there are a total of 8 of them, as I just mentioned. Watch for save the dates and details soon. We're going to be doing the citywide and borough-wide races jointly with the other downtown clubs. So we're expecting large turnouts and these are going to be really important forums. Our candidates tonight are going to speak in the following order. First, Jenny Lowe, followed by Gigi Lee, Maud Marin, Tiffany Winbush, and Christopher Marte. I want to outline the format that we've set up for tonight so everybody's aware of it, and then we'll also post it in the chat so people can see who may come on later or candidates who may not be on right now. So each candidate is going to get 15 total minutes with up to 5 minutes for an introductory statement, and the remaining time will be Q&A. During Q&A, if you want to ask a question, please just note it in the chat in the topic. There isn't a lot of time, so we're going to go through them, pick the topics that are unique, and go through it as quickly as possible. Of course, DID members are going to be given preference for questions, but we will call on other people to ask questions if we have time. We're asking people and we're going to limit the questions to 30 seconds. So no rambling, just ask your question. And then we're encouraging candidates to limit their answers to 2 minutes. Candidates will not be asking questions of each other. Now, please respect these principles. Assume good faith of the candidates and the other questioners and the other attendees. Recognize and respect others' feelings, background, and cultural differences. And if your question has been asked, please respect the limited time and don't repeat it. After we hear from all the candidates, we're going to ask them and all non-DID members to leave the event. Then we're going to follow it with a member discussion, which is going to be limited to 30 minutes. All members may request to speak, and we're going to create a speakers list and take speakers in order. I'm going to go through all this later, but I just wanted to let you know that that segment is going to be for DID members only. We will endorse tonight. Members are eligible to vote if they are current in dues, if they've been a member for 3 months or more, if in district, or 6 months or more if out of district, and if they don't vote in another club. We will announce the endorsed winner very likely tomorrow, because we're going to keep we'll keep the ballot open until the close of the meeting. And we will use ranked choice voting so that we all learn and experience what the city is implementing next year. So with that, and I want to also ask people, if you've dialed in or if you haven't got your name in your box, please put your name in there so we know who's attending and who may be eligible to vote later. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jenny Lam Lowe as our first candidate for City Council District 1.
Thank you, Richard. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to join you tonight. I'm Jenny Lowe. I'm a lifelong advocate of Lower Manhattan as a district leader and a board member of a $190 million nonprofit organization while keeping a private sector professional career for about 29 years. I'm ready to put my proven skills and knowledge to work and help District 1 recover from the devastation caused by COVID. My family came to this country with nothing. I didn't even know the alphabet, but through sheer determination and hard work, support from the community and my family, I was able to succeed in my career and hold many different leadership roles in the community. I spent my whole life helping Lower Manhattan, empowering women, immigrants, and people of color, fighting for our progressive values. I've been on the board of Eleanor Legacy's committee for about 10 years. And we have certainly helped build a progressive farm team of women of color for elected office statewide. As a district leader for 25 years, I've been able to raise political awareness of our community and help countless immigrants and low-income individuals become politically aware, and also working with the club UDO in support of many progressive candidates and become successful in running for office. As a member of the Chinese American Planning Council for 30 years, we have enabled countless immigrants and low-income families become economically self-sufficient. People have been asking me to run for years because of my proven track record and years of experience. And I'm glad that I have the early endorsement of Congresswomen Nydia Velasquez, Carolyn Maloney, New York State Senator John Liu, and Assembly Member Yulin Liu. They have already endorsed me. I've been thinking about running, but especially now, amid the COVID pandemic, I see the devastation across the district. I'm getting off the sideline and ready to put my skills, experience, and passion to work and to fight for an equitable recovery for the pandemic, out of the pandemic as our next council member. I'm ready to put my decades of experience as a community leader, my skills in the private, public sectors as our next council member to fight for working families, small businesses to get the support that they need, address the affordable housing crisis, demand real reform in the NYPD, improve the public school system that opened the opportunity for me, and to help seniors and families with food insecurity. Throughout the pandemic, I jumped right in to volunteer for those who are in need and the seniors. I am one of the many volunteers who built a network to help work with Rethink Food NYC. We have distributed over 420,000 meals across the Lower East Side and Chinatown. And the number of meals are continuing to be delivered and counting. 2021 will be a huge turnover year for the City Council. There will be 35 new members, many of whom have never been in elected office or have never had that experience that will demonstrate that they can help our district.
30 seconds remaining.
Our district needs a council member who does not need any training. With my demonstrated track record in the private, public, and nonprofit sector, I can hit the ground running on day one as council member representing District 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So we are going to go to questions, and Sue, you're going to call
Thank
out.
you, Richard.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the first question that came up was from Susan Wittenberg.
Susan can go ahead and unmute.
I'm unmuted, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, hi. Hi, Gigi. Thank you for coming this evening.
My name is Jenny Lowe.
It's Jenny.
Hi. Sorry, I'm mistaken. I'm going to remove my question and go on. I was jumping ahead. I just got here. Sorry. I'm not asking a question now.
Okay, Laura Tannenbaum, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, Jenny. How are you?
How are you?
Good. I really enjoy all the food you keep posting on your website, Facebook. Anyway, I do have a question, and I think it's kind of what Susan was, but I think it should be a question that should be asked now. We've had Margaret Chin as our city council member for a long time. And what would you do as city council member that's the same? What would you do that's different?
So let me start with what would I do that's different. As a council member, as someone who have been working in the district for over 40 years, I truly believe and I practice working with folks, people in the community, whether it is a project in the neighborhood or a project across the district, working with them to understand their needs and learn about, from their perspective, how it is to solve a problem. What we need is a council member who will listen and find common grounds among people who may have differences. You elect a council member to represent you, right? So what you are looking for is someone who will listen to you, your perspective, and find ways to solve a problem that will benefit the most number of people. What does that mean? That means you're electing someone who is going to represent you, not how she wants to, how she believes that it should be done for you. I have worked with folks from across the district where my training in the private sector to understand the cause of the problem, and my ability to convene people had demonstrated the fact that many issues that have many sides of the story. So that's what I would be doing different. We have a council member currently representing us who works hard, but we have not seen her. Throughout the pandemic, we have not seen that council member representing our district. We have seen other local elected officials distributing PPE, distributing food. I'm not an elected official, but seeing the devastation, I've been working with the folks who are on the ground, not only distributing meals, but also helping, working with nonprofit organizations and the local small businesses to help turn them around. As an example, we see that, as you know, many of the streets are so-called open streets, and to enable restaurants and small businesses increase foot traffic so that they could have a better chance of surviving. I've been talking with small businesses in one particular part of the district, which is Chinatown. It is the only part of the town that only has 2 small blocks that have open street. The main part of Chinatown does not have open street. I went and talked with small businesses, understand what they are looking for. All we want is open street for the weekends. Open street meaning close to vehicular traffic, just like what happens with Little Italy. And we are facing a lot of, we're not even getting a response. A letter was written to our current council member, we didn't even get a response. So what I would do the same is that I know this council member Chin, works very hard. I've seen her at City Hall. I've seen her in the district before the pandemic. She worked very hard. I am someone who will give more than 100% into any project or any role that I take on. And that is seen throughout my 40 some odd years of volunteering in the district. I hope that gives you some perspective of where I'm coming from, Laura. So I don't know if that answers your question. Be happy to elaborate if you want.
Well, thank you. No, that was a good answer. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to call on one of our district leaders, Janine Kiley. And I just want to ask if you could possibly keep it to about a minute because we're getting of an answer because we're getting quite a few questions. I want to make sure you have the opportunity to answer everything. Go ahead, Janine.
Okay, well, the question will be short. Hello, Jenny, fellow district leader. I just want to know if you're planning on running for district leader at the same time. And if you win, will you pledge not to run again as district leader and state committee woman? And then sort of my two-part is, what was your role with the Chinatown jail and what's your position on it? Thank you.
Okay, so there are quite a few questions here, Janine, and
I know.
I will try my best to answer them in 1 minute, right? I have not determined what I'm going to do with respect to the district leadership. I've been a district leader for 25 years. And the one time that I had a challenge, I won the race by 89% of the vote. So I will determine that as the days in the coming days and weeks and months before we get to the primary. With respect to the state committee role, again, that role doesn't expire until 2022. So I have time to really think about that. And I will make that decision most likely post-primary of 2021. With respect to the situation, the borough-based jails, first of all, I am in support of closing Rikers Island, which is a hellhole, pardon the language. And the borough-based jail concept has been studied and for many years. And the final report came out by a study led by former Chief Justice Jonathan Littman. That came out in February of 2018. At that time, many of us, self-included, talked to the current council member and asked the council member to start talking to the community leaders about the situation and what it is that the community is looking for when the proposal by the mayor comes out for a renovation of the current tomb system. But I was there when we fought the current tomb in 30 some odd years ago, where we fought and got a compromise from the city, where right next to the current tomb, there is a complex that is managed by a nonprofit organization. It contains a senior housing, contains a childcare center, a clinic, and local open retail spaces that are managed by a nonprofit organization. I was there in that fight. We won because we held our ground to the city. We told the city, the mayor at the time, that if we are not going to get what the community needs at the time, he can leave a hole in the ground for whatever time that he wants to. And that's how we fought for that. The mayor, in putting out a proposal for what he imagined the new tombs to be, was totally ignoring the community's need. It was done in the dark. Even when the mayor came with his people came to the town hall, they did not listen to any of the concern about construction, the dust that was left over from 9/11, the health issues that could be faced by the seniors who live right next door.
1 minute remaining, Jenny.
That could cause to the neighborhoods. The mayor's people did not do anything to mitigate any of the concerns that the community have. This project has to stop, and it has to go through a transparent process with full community input. No matter what the outcome will be, if community, the residents of this neighborhood doesn't have input, there is no project. I hope I answered your question, Janine.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. Sorry, Jenny.
It's okay, David. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. And again, I am available to answer any questions that any one of you may have after this. I think most of you can find my contact information. If not, Richard has it. So Richard, feel free to give it to your members if they're looking for it.
Yes, Jenny. So give that to me. Just make sure I have it and your website, and we'll communicate that out.
Yeah, so the website is jennylow.nyc, and my email address is jenny@jennylow.nyc.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Our next candidate and guest is Gigi Lee. And Gigi, are you on?
I'm here. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Gigi. Welcome.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. We can start?
Yes. So were you on when we went through the format? So total of 15 minutes and up to
Okay.
5 minutes for introduction, and then Q&A after that.
Sure. Great. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Good to see some familiar faces. Thank you for the time and the opportunity to speak to the DID membership. So my name's Gigi Lee. I'm one of the candidates for the Lower Manhattan Council District 1 seat. So a little bit about me. Third generation in my family in Lower Manhattan. Came here as a young child with my parents, and first to graduate from college, and just being raised in a very traditional Chinese family. A really pivotal turning point for me was going to Smith College and really thinking about how to utilize my voice and the privilege that I was able to get from having a great education to think about how I wanted to use my time and my energy. And so very quickly decided to come back to the community that gave me and my family so many opportunities. And so I've basically spent my entire adult professional life being an advocate. Started with working with families and children that were impacted by domestic violence, and because of that decided to go to social work school and really think about why was it so difficult working with families and children in times of need, that the government was making it so difficult to access the services that they needed, sitting at HRA fair hearings for hours at a time, helping translate and really unravel very complex policies where clients were not treated very well, going to Court Street, DOE, because schools would not enroll students because we had to use a PO box for a shelter address, and them denying children the right to go to a school close to the shelter. And so after social work school, I spent just under a decade starting as an intern and then ending up as the executive director of a nonprofit based in the financial district that worked with 36 nonprofits. It was a coalition working on DYCD, DOE, and ACS issues. So I think there's three main projects that I worked on that I'm particularly proud of. One is being on the mayor's task force to help design UPK NYC. The other is tripling the size of the summer youth employment program, and then also expanding the model of community schools citywide, working with DOE on that. So at the same time, I also wanted to get very involved locally, and so joined Community Board 3 back in 2009, and was on Community Board 3 for, again, just about 10 years, and was chair of the community board that represented Chinatown, Lower East Side, and some of the East Village for those 10 years. And I think the two projects that I'm most proud of during that time is the Essex Crossing development project, which is just under 2 million square feet of multi-use space that was the largest open space south of 96th Street, which I think many of you are familiar with and have visited, which has over 55% permanent affordable housing, which is something that was very hard fought and the community board played a very pivotal role in. And then also that was the years that Superstorm Sandy came and resiliency and recovery really changed the way Lower Manhattan works and functions. And so
Gigi, 30 seconds remaining.
Oh my gosh, so fast. Okay, I'm gonna talk faster. And so just skipping forward, I would say that I have also worked for Councilmember Chin for the past 2 years. So I would say that my 3 priorities really are government accessibility, continuing to fight for affordable housing, and COVID recovery. And it's really about bringing broad coalitions together and looking at the larger picture. And I would love to have the opportunity to represent you in the City Council. I'm ready to work hard and put my diverse range of experience to fight for the residents of Council District 1.
Thank you,
Fast
Gigi.
forwarded to meet the
Yeah.
timeline.
Right. And Sue, you're going to manage the question.
Sure, yeah,
Period.
thanks. Gigi, the first question is from Susan Wittenberg. And I just want to mention, Susan, if you could ask the question in 30 seconds or less. And Gigi, we have quite a few people with questions. So if you could try to answer in a minute or less, I know it's hard, but if you could try, that would be really great.
Okay.
Go ahead, Susan.
Hi, Gigi. Nice to see you. Very
Hi.
fast. Going back to Councilmember Chin, are there any decisions Councilmember Chin made that you would disagree with? How would you distinguish yourself from her track record?
Sure. So I think that there is a sense of engagement that is lacking from just having that conversation from a beginning of a project through, for example, through a ULURP. And it's really important, and something I would focus on is to bring impacted voices into a process of coalition building. I think all the voices always start off as diverse, but I think that everyone ultimately living here wants the best for the community, right? And I point to the Seward Park project that was unsuccessful for multiple mayoral administrations as an example, and that these impacted voices really have a seat at the table, but at the same time, looking just at the larger picture around planning for the future of this district and how we can, I think oftentimes we look at things that are siloed in like this neighborhood or that neighborhood, but really, you know, there's no, those lines are very arbitrary in a sense, right? Like,
put Elizabeth Street Garden in the category of perhaps not adequately listening to all the voices of the community?
I would say, yeah. That was, I know that project was inserted as part of actually the same Seward Park extension vote. So I think
do you agree with Councilmember Chin's position on Elizabeth Street Garden?
The ultimate decision to build affordable housing on that lot, I do agree with, but I think that the process could have been handled better.
Next question, Sue.
Yeah, Tamika Mapp is the next question.
Hi, Gigi. I have a two-part question. The first one is, what does reentry looks like to you, and how will you ensure that the community will have input with the governor's community policing plan that has to be in place by April 2021?
So the reentry plan has, I think that there should be more money and funding put into the alternative to incarceration model, particularly for young people. I think that there needs to be opportunities for communities to be supportive of individuals that come into contact with the criminal justice system. There are lots of examples throughout the country where hopefully when we achieve real bail reform, and there are less individuals that are in the system because they can't pay cash bail, or there's more options for it, to really piece together workforce opportunities. I think it's health and mental health opportunities, and housing. I think that these are root causes of why a lot of individuals are put in disadvantaged positions. I also feel like there needs to be, even before there's that interaction, there need to be more programs for young people, more equitable education opportunities. And so I think there's a lot that can be done pre, and then also a lot that can be done post.
Thank you, Gigi.
Thanks.
Next question.
Thanks,
Yes.
Gigi. The next question we'll take from Sarah Albatuni. Sarah, go ahead and ask there. You're asking it, but a few people are asking the same question.
Hey, Gigi, nice to see you again. Hi, would love to know your point of view regarding the homeless shelters that are proposed for financial district with the little information we are receiving and transparency from the city.
Yeah, I do not believe that the way the mayor handled and continues to handle the shelter relocation of the residents from the Lucerne to 52 William, I don't agree with it. I don't think that that plan should move forward. I believe that the decision is being made out of fear of a lawsuit, and that is not the priority that we should be focusing on here. I think what we should be focusing on is how is the city treating and helping homeless individuals and moving these residents 3 or 4 times in the course of less than a year actually shows how broken our system is and how broken the mayor's plan to eradicate homelessness is.
Thank you.
The next question is from Trevor Holland. Trevor, if you can unmute yourself.
Sorry, I didn't know it was going to be called. I'm on my phone. My question is for Gigi, but it's also for other candidates. It relates to the Two Bridges Mega Tower developments. And it's simply the City Council and Borough President case was overturned recently. However, the Tough LAS case remains. The judges have said in the case that the ultimate solution is to rezone the area. The community groups have a rezoning plan in place at city planning, although resources and support are needed. We simply want to know where you stand on the rezoning for Two Bridges.
Hi, Trevor. Very on point with your question. So as you know, I was part of Chinatown Working Group in forming that plan. I do believe that the community plan has some very strong components to it. I feel like it is a great starting point to negotiate a new rezoning. I think that with a new mayor, that there may be more possibilities to reach that. I think currently mandatory inclusionary housing has been very problematic and has kind of created constraints that have been very contradictory to a lot of community rezoning plans, which is why you see a lot of rezoning plans throughout the city being legally challenged. So I would definitely be open to working with you and the leaders that are supporting the community rezoning plan. I think that it is something that we debated for a very, very long time in Chinatown Working Group, and that and that there are very strong components. Do I agree with everything in the plan? No, but I think that it is a very good point for starting for negotiation.
There's 1 minute remaining.
That was my answer.
So for our last question, Laura, could you go ahead?
Sure. Something that's been, sorry, hello? I
Hi,
just got
I hear you.
weird, okay, there you are. Hi, Gigi.
Hi, good to see you again.
Good seeing you too. We sat across from each other a lot during Envision Soho, NoHo. And my question actually relates to that because as of late, there's been a lot of noise coming from large real estate interests, I would say, to upzone NoHo and Soho, ostensibly to create affordable housing, but the net result would be ultra tall buildings filled to the brim with ultra rich people that would completely change the demographics of our community, not to what we would want to see as a more equitable community, but as a community that is ultra rich. And I just
Laura,
want
let's
to
go
know where
for
you
a quick
stand.
question and then for a quick answer from Gigi.
I just want to
Appreciate
know
it.
how you
Thank you.
stand on that.
So the principle that I do agree with is that I do believe that every neighborhood in the city should play a role in helping the affordable housing crisis, right? I think that there has to be nuance in the NoHo Soho plan if it were to move forward. There are a lot of JLWQA issues, there are air issues, there are artist certification issues, and I think that any plan that were to move forward would really need to tackle truly with government subsidy, that again, it's the same principle that I answered Trevor's question with, is that MIH is problematic because you're only getting at most 25% affordability and you're getting 75% luxury housing at
Sorry,
income.
Gigi. I'm just want to make sure everyone gets the same amount of time. We're just gonna have to wrap up.
Thanks, I got the gist, Gigi.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Gigi, thank you so much. If you want to put your contact information in the chat and website,
Sure, I will do
feel
that
free
right
to
now.
do that.
Great. Thank you so much for everyone's time.
Yes, thanks for joining us. And our next candidate and guest is Maud Marin. Maud, are you here?
I am here. Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hello.
If you
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, hello, and thank you, Richard and DID membership for hosting this evening's event. And hello to all the familiar faces. My name is Maud Marin, and I'm a candidate for City Council District 1, as you all know. And like you all, I'm a New Yorker with a story about how I have come to live in and love downtown Manhattan. So a bit about me first, for those of you who don't know me. I am a mom of 4 kids, 3 sons and a daughter, ages 14, 12, 10, and 4 years old, and they're all in New York City public schools. I'm a wife of 15 years to an immigrant to our city, my husband, Juan Pablo. I was born in Manhattan and lived here for the first several years of my life. I attended Barnard College and Cardozo Law School, after which I became a public defender, and I spent my career in the criminal defense practice of New York City's largest public defender agency. Outside of my day job, I've been committed to serving my community with a focus on education. I am currently the elected president of the Community Education Council for Community School District 2, where I've served for 4 years. And I served on the community board too for 5 years, and on the school leadership teams of PS 41 and the Salk School of Science. Each one of those roles requires you to listen and to advocate for others based on what you hear and what you know. Those critical listening skills that I hone every day matter more than ever as we face one of the hardest years we'll have in front of us. Thousands of New Yorkers have died, and the economic devastation our city is facing is real. Chinatown in particular took the economic hit of this virus earlier than many neighborhoods and needs immediate and continued support to recover. All our neighborhoods do. Our community need leaders who listen. So let me tell you what I've heard. We all want to live in safe neighborhoods with affordable housing and the vibrant storefront businesses that make our neighborhoods unique. We need to reduce the burden on businesses. We need more open spaces for everyone. We need laws that protect our seniors and programs that make sure anyone who needs a meal gets one. And we need excellent public schools. So how do we tackle these issues? Communities need to have a say in what happens in their neighborhoods. We know that turning our communities over to developers is not the answer. That is true when new residential buildings are proposed that are out of scale for a community. It is also true when Bill de Blasio tries to build a mega jail in Chinatown. Having spent years working with incarcerated clients, I can tell you that changing the zip code of Rikers Island does not fix its problems, and there are many. The exorbitant price tag of $8.7 billion for borough-based jails comes at the cost of investing that money in ways that could truly help the most disadvantaged New Yorkers. We need to improve our schools. This year, for the first time, I have a child in high school, middle school, elementary school, and pre-K. So that's a lot of Zoom schedules right now. But our schools prior to COVID, we had families who struggled with unaddressed needs, children who had special needs like dyslexia, students who were looking for a dwindling number of gifted and talented programs. And now with the chaotic school reopening and closing, families are leaving in record numbers. And this is devastating for our schools, but also for the tax base in our city. We need families to stay. We need local businesses to survive this pandemic, and we need new businesses to open. And the only way that will happen is if we lift the burden on businesses and make it easier to open and to operate. Commercial taxes are simply too high for this moment in our city. Downtown Manhattan has miles of beautiful shoreline and riverfront open space that we need to maintain and protect with smart and community-driven resiliency plans. But we have not nearly enough sports fields to meet the ever-growing needs of families and sports enthusiasts. My first job out of college was at Randall's Island. I worked for the Parks Department. And I saw firsthand how a public-private model a public-private partnership model could really transform a park. And there's many acres of park in Randall's Island. Downtown neighborhoods need innovative solutions like that.
New York, just 30 seconds remaining.
Sure. We need a neighborhood where we can grow our businesses, where our children and young adults will receive where families can grow and enjoy outdoor space, where our seniors can live comfortably. I want to represent all of those who choose to stay in New York and to be a voice of downtown on the City Council. I hope to earn your endorsement. Thank you again for hosting this evening, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Maud. Much appreciated. And let's go to the questions. Sue.
Thanks, Maud. First question is from Akila. Akila, if you could unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, Akila.
Hi, Maud. Thank you for coming to speak to us. I had a question for you. In a recent interview that you gave, you discussed equity in public schools by saying that providing equity to underserved Black and Latinx families in a public education system is a loser of an argument. In light of parents and educators underscoring deep inequities in our education system today and recent reporting, what are you currently doing to build coalition with Black and Latinx families in Lower Manhattan? Specifically, which Black and Latinx organizations or community leaders have you partnered with?
So that's a super important topic, and thank you for asking it. I do think it's sort of super important to get our quotes right. So I'm a little bit misquoted there. But even if the quote isn't correct, the topic is super important. So as I mentioned, so I'll tell you one of the things that I've been working on that I'm particularly proud of and hopeful about. As the CEC president for District 2, which many of you know, since we're talking about City Council District 1, District 2 for school districts is much larger, covers a very big part of City Council District 1, but also covers the Upper East Side and Midtown and a very large part of Manhattan. I have worked for a long time on the New York State integration pilot for that, which is a pilot program that aims to integrate schools. And we have 49 schools in District 2. That team was a very diverse team of people. We brought together a lot of voices to work on and submitted a very significant integration plan to the New York State Department of Education, which we are very hopeful we will get full funding for, which would have been wonderful even before COVID to have the extra funding we need to help some of our most marginalized students who do tend to be not exclusively, but sometimes the Black and Hispanic students in our district are overrepresented in the students who need additional academic supports. So, but now that we're in a COVID budget and our schools are losing so much money, it's particularly important. So that is work that I think
no one has actually seen that report that you're working on. It hasn't been released to the public. We have been trying to get a copy of it, but no one can see it. So we're not really sure how that report is going to address this question that I'm asking you.
So it's not a report. It's a grant proposal submitted to the New York State Department of Education.
Yep. The NYSEP grant proposal, that's correct.
And it is, if you go to the Community School District 2 website, there's a tab there with a lot of information about that proposal. I am the one CEC member, Community Education Council member on that team, but I'm not actually in control of the overall report, but I have contributed as a parent leader and as a member of that team, the perspective that I've heard.
There's actually been no one on that team. There's no parent leader on that team who is from Black or Latinx community that's underserved. There's not a parent member on that team from that community. So I'd like to know which parent or community or leadership groups in the Lower Manhattan Black and Latinx leadership groups that you have partnered with.
Akila, thank you for that. And let's let Maud answer this, and we'll need to go on to another question.
So I've worked with all of the school leaders who have come forth, including all of the schools who the PTA and principals who have reached out to me, many from Lower Manhattan schools, from both Community School District 1 and Community School District 2 who reach out, as well as the members of our team on the CEC Council, including Edward Irizarry, who has worked as our diversity team chair. He is a Latino member of the team. I personally don't really think I don't love identifying people by race all the time. I don't think it necessarily serves a great purpose. Our team is a very diverse team, but I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense to go through and tick off the color of skin of everybody on a team. So we have had, one thing I will say though that I think is very relevant is unlike almost every other district, in fact, I think District 2, at my urging, is the only community school district that conducted community engagement sessions around our integration team. Other school districts, including Community School District 1, and I've worked with some of the members of that team, they submitted grant proposals too, but none of them conducted community engagement sessions. I was the CEC president who insisted on conducting community engagement sessions so that we could hear from the many diverse voices. And Akila, I believe you came and spoke at the first community engagement session that we heard from. And in fact, the room that you spoke in the Clinton basement when we were there was filled with very diverse voices. And I'm very proud of the work that I did there to insist that we have community engagement around this project.
Thank you. Yeah, do we have any other questions for Maud? Oh, David, you wanted to ask a question.
Sure. Hi, Maud. I just wanted to hear about your positions regarding the proposed upzonings of Soho NoHo.
Yeah, so I attended some of the envisioning sessions that Community Board 2 hosted, and I really did listen to what people said. I do think we need to have more affordable housing, and there are, you know, the Open New York proposals identified in a really thoughtful and specific way some places where it would make sense to look at affordable housing. I am absolutely not in favor of building big towers in Soho. It is a beautiful historic neighborhood, and I think we need to maintain the historic nature of Soho. But I do think we can be really thoughtful and targeted about some places where we might be able to do some affordable housing, because we do, all neighborhoods need to make sure we can participate in creating more affordable housing.
Thank you. Taylor McGraw had a question about culturally responsible curricula and anti-bias training. Taylor?
Thank you. Yeah. So I was going to ask about school segregation and issues of diversity, but that's sort of been covered. So I'll shift gears a little bit. I will say that it's a fact that Maud supports screens in our schools that are racially discriminatory, and that's fuel segregation, and is one of the leaders of an advocacy organization that has attacked and belittled high school students who I work with. I'm the executive director of a youth nonprofit in District 1. But the other thing that's troubling is Maud, you have publicly questioned the value of anti-bias training and culturally responsive education. Your employer, the Legal Aid Society, has actually called you out on racist comments that you've made in the past. And so I'd like to ask you now if you want to maybe correct the record or change your position. Do you still oppose culturally responsive education and anti-bias training in schools?
So this is a really important topic also. And I will say that it occurs to me that 4 years ago, I brought my daughter with me into the voting booth because I thought we were voting for the first woman president of this country, and I was very excited about that. So I brought her with me.
Maud, just 1 minute remaining. Do you want to make this?
Sure, no problem. So I brought my daughter with me, but we didn't wind up with the first woman president. We wound up with a president who insults people and attacks people and tries to shut down conversation from anyone who disagrees with him. I think that's awful. And I don't think it's a way to strengthen our democracy. And I don't think it's a way to solve the very real problems that we as communities face. So I'll say this to you, Taylor McGraw. I understand your desire to bash me over the head because you disagree with me. I am a public school parent. I have fought incredibly hard to create equitable solutions in our schools and to keep our schools incredibly strong. We need to have really hard conversations with other parents in these schools if we're going to solve the very real problems that we have. Your system of attacking public school parents who don't agree with you is a loser of a system. And I will say that again and again. It doesn't work. You have to be willing to listen to people who think differently than you, and you have to be willing to speak to them respectfully. Someone asked me an easy question now, and I'll give you a short, easy answer.
Sorry, we want to give everyone the same amount of time.
All right, I hear you.
Maud.
Thank you for listening to me. Sorry for the emotion in my voice, but I care very passionately about this subject. And I'm going to put my information in the chat. So, so if anyone who wants to have a thoughtful and respectful conversation about any of the many topics that we have to face as a downtown community, I'd be very happy to have them with you.
Thank you, Maud. Your passion is very clear here. Please put your information in the chat, and we appreciate you joining us tonight. Our next candidate and guest is Tiffany Winbush. Tiffany, are you here?
Yes, I am. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Tiffany. Welcome.
Thank you. Can I jump right in?
Yes, please. Please jump right in.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone. I first want to just thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to everyone tonight. I know I am a new face for some, so I hope the information I share about myself will shed a little light on who I am. So I am a 15-year resident of the Financial District. I currently live here with my husband, and we are raising two school-age children, one who is in a New York City public school, so I'm a proud public school parent. I am a New York City transplant, but I certainly consider myself a New Yorker after living here for 15 years, and this is our home. We will be here, I grew up in a single parent household, and I think that really, kind of motivated me to who I am today. My mom was a single mother of four. She oftentimes worked, unfortunately, upward of 3 jobs just to take care of us. And you know what? She worked as hard as she possibly could until she passed away. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But her example really drove me. So it caused me to get my first job, at least on the books, at the age of 15, where I had an opportunity to work at a bakery right across the street from my school, my high school. But because I wanted to stay active in extracurricular activities, that meant that I woke up and I worked a 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift every morning before going to school. And that really, I would say, prepared me to land me where I am here in life. It prepared me to make a move to New York City without knowing anyone. Well, I knew all of 2 people, my husband, who was my then fiance at the time, and the sister of a coworker of mine. I moved to New York City, moved to Financial District, did not realize that I would end up loving this particular neighborhood. But it has become, a place that I call home. And it is somewhere that I want to call home for a very long time. I knew when I moved here that I needed to get to know people and get involved. I was able to immediately get involved in the wider Manhattan community by volunteering with my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which is a 100-plus-year-old organization, public service organization. And through that organization, I mentored high school girls. I also worked very closely with the New York Junior League, advocating for the rights of women and girls on a state level. But then even closer to home, I had an opportunity to serve 3 terms on the local community board number 1, where I was a part of the subcommittee for affordable housing. And one of the standout things that we did while I served on that committee was we pinpointed rent stabilized buildings within our community. And then we empowered those residents of those rent stabilized buildings to go and ask for what they deserve to be paying and not any inflated rates that their landlords wanted them to pay. I'm also very active at my daughter's school. She attends school right in the Seaport area, and I've been on the executive committee of the PTA for the past several years, most recently serving as vice president. I have thrown my hat in the ring to run for city council to represent us in District 1, because I think there are many people who are like me, who may feel as though their voices are not being heard. There are people who are, managing life with their partner, as well as raising a family, juggling a career, and also who are doing their best to stay active, to be a part of the community, but just wants to make sure that their thoughts and their insights are also being heard in their broader community. So I am hopeful to represent District 1, and I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tiffany. Sue?
Yes, let's see. Do we have any questions? While people are preparing, Tiffany, would you mind speaking to the shelter, the homeless shelter in FIDI? I know that question came up earlier to be asked for all of the candidates.
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to share insight last week on the joint meeting between the Community Board and the Department of Homeless Services, as well as Project Renewal. I am proud to have band together with a group of neighbors in the Financial District called Friends of FIDI. And essentially, our thought process is, like pretty much everyone, is that the mayor made a decision without alerting our community, and we don't agree with his decision to move the shelter residents from the Upper West Side down to the Financial District. Not only because it will re-traumatize the men who are part of that shelter community who've already been moved 3 to 4 times, but as I mentioned, he did not get any any input from the community. But with that being said, if by chance the move happens to take place on October 15th as it is scheduled, I am proud to be one of the community members who will stand and who will welcome those men into our community. The messaging that I have heard the past week around why we cannot let them be a part of our community has been absolutely disgusting. I went to an in-person meeting just as everything was being organized, and I heard frequently, we don't want them in our community. And I stood there and I was completely taken back, because when someone thinks we don't want them in my community, that them could have easily been a Black person. I am a Black woman. It could have easily been a person who English is not their first language. It could easily be a person whose sexual orientation is something that you don't agree with. So I think that we get on a slippery slope when we start pointing out the simple fact that there's a them over us. And I have been, just last night in my building's mailroom, I found a letter as my daughter and I were putting out signs for our neighbors to remind them to complete the census, that, we were going to have drug dealers and sex offenders move into our community, and just, outright belittling of people that we don't even know who they are. So I'll just stress once again that I am not happy with the mayor's decision. I do not agree with the move, not only because of the men have declared that they don't want to relocate, but the community was not heard. But if that move happens to happen, I am going to make sure that I am not speaking down on people, making people feel worse than they already feel, and, potentially set them back in their recovery, whatever that recovery might be.
Great. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Jill Goodkind had a question. Jill, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, Tiffany. Thank you for mentioning that the good work Community Board 1 and you and everyone has done in terms of affordable housing. My question is, what actions would you take to create more affordable housing in the district?
So I want to say I absolutely 100% believe in affordable housing. I talked about my mom and how she worked, in low income jobs. And there were many times that we were housing insecure. It is by the grace of having a solid, family and village that we never lived on the streets. But that doesn't mean that, there weren't times when we had to double up. We certainly did. We need more affordable housing within our city, especially within our community. And I think now is the time to really start to make that come true. January 2021 is going to be here in no time. And once the eviction moratorium has run out, what the governor has put into place, we're going to see so many families who are going to be impacted by the fact that they can't pay their rent. And so I know that there are many proposals to build, tall sky-high towers just right down the street from me, directly across the street within feet of my daughter's school. There is a plan to propose like an 89 tower towers. Now, I'm not opposed to development, but I know that that particular site is zoned for 12 stories. So that's what that developer should have a right to do. But as far as putting more affordable housing within our community, we have to look around and we have to, really get radical about it. There are many buildings that are going to be empty. It was just reported in the financial district alone, there are about 4 hotels that have closed because, of course, we don't have tourism. So those particular hotels, we should not use them as places as transient shelter where people are coming in and out. But we should really look at a way to see how we can convert those empty hotels into long-term affordable housing where people can live, where they can be a part of the community, and they can make it their home, where they don't have to worry about frequently moving in order to be able to afford a place to live and, take care of themselves and raise their families.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tiff. We had a couple of people ask the same question, if you could speak to the real estate industry's call for upzoning SoHo and NoHo. And if I could just remind you, if you could try to keep it to a minute just so we could ask you as many questions as possible. Thanks.
Sure, of course. So as I mentioned earlier, believe in affordable housing, but there is no guarantee that a developer is going to give us that affordable housing that we need. As it's been mentioned, they only are obligated if they participate upwards of 25%. So if we are going to, build new housing, it needs to be within the character of the community, number one. So whether you're building in NoHo or in SoHo, or you're wanting to build in the Seaport, the fabrics of those communities are very, low-lying buildings. So we need to continue with the fabric of that building. And, this is now the time to think about, do we need to build extra buildings, or can we utilize some of those buildings that are already built, and can we then transition them from whatever they happen to be now into affordable housing for more people?
Thank you. Tamika, did you want to ask a question?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Tiff, for being here. My question is, what is your stance on community land trust programs and public banking?
So there are many people who are in low income communities who are unbanked or underbanked, right? They don't have any access to a banking institution, whether it be because, the amount of money they keep into their account on a monthly basis does not meet that particular threshold, or because the way that they get paid doesn't necessarily allow them to use a bank. There have been a number of, citywide programs like the NYC ID program and things of that nature that have allowed people to gain things that are needed, such as an ID. So I think trying to incorporate, community banking in that aspect is public banking is something that we can certainly do. And there are a number of individuals, people within our city who would benefit greatly from that as well. I think in regards of a community land trust, I think we have seen it is proven that when communities get together, when they work together, when they do what's right and what's best for their community, great things come out of it. So I believe that we should, give the community more of a voice, let them be empowered to make decisions about their community. And so I think, those particular programs would certainly give an opportunity for community residents to do that.
Thank you. I am going to call on Lila, and I have to apologize to you, Tiff. I said you have 1 minute and you've been awesome, and you actually have 2 minutes. So my apologies for making you speak so quickly. Go ahead, Lila.
Hi, how are you? My question is more towards education. A lot of the candidates don't seem to be getting too much into the scope of education. So one of my questions is, how would you target desegregating our schools? What is your stance on the Shizet's test? And I'll keep it at that.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. My daughter, of course, she goes to a school that is diverse in the sense of we have people who come from many parts of the world, and diversity can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But if we happen to look at the diversity as it relates to Black and Brown students, I know that we don't have as much as we could have at our school. And because we don't have as much as we could have, we have faced issues within our families where my daughter has been racially discriminated against. And maybe not necessarily because certainly a pre-K or a kindergartner is racist, but just because they don't live in a family where they're exposed to different types of people, right? So if you're living in a household where it's just not the top of mind, where you need to be exposed to a diverse group of people, school should be the next step where you receive an opportunity to interact with people who are diverse and who are different than you and have different thoughts and who have families who are different than yours. So yes, I believe that we certainly need diversity in our schools, and certainly in District 2 as well. I think that I probably am not the only person who will look at the map of the districts and there is shock about the simple fact that District 2 is carved out in a way that it really doesn't allow people in certain, racially minority groups to be a part of the school. So we do need to do whatever we need to do to ensure that we have diversity in the school. So that does mean, very well opening up our middle schools and high schools to people who don't necessarily lie within the district. And I know that there are several proposals out from organizations who support that as well. As far as
Tiffany, you got 40 seconds left.
Okay. Yes, and
can you answer the question with the standardized testing and the mayor's proposal to eliminate it?
So yes, I do think we should eliminate the standardized test. And I know that goes against the grain of a lot of people who feel as though that particular test gets them into a school that's going to catapult them a certain way. But we should really look at equity in education as a whole, and it should not be based on whether or not a student is great at taking a test or not.
Tiffany, Do we have
Go
time
ahead.
for another, or is that it?
That's
what I
it.
was going to
Thank you,
ask David.
Tiffany.
Okay, thank you.
Tiffany, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. And could you put your contact and
Sure will.
website information in the chat?
Thank you for having me, everyone. Have a great night.
Have a great night. Thanks, Tiffany. And our last candidate is Christopher Marte. Chris, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me, Richard?
Yep. Welcome.
Yeah.
All right. Begin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Marte. For the past 3 years, I've worked for an organization called Arena, where we help Democrats win a majority in the New York State Senate. I was born and raised on the Lower East Side, where my dad owned a bodega underneath my building. I attended a local public school, studied abroad for college, and spent 2 years in China before starting a career in finance. But as challenges arose in my neighborhood, like gentrification and the closure of small businesses, I realized I wanted to help the community that helped raise me. So I started doing the work in my own neighborhood, focusing on workers' rights, displacement, and creating community gardens in NYCHA. I realized many of our problems came from the same source. So in 2017, I ran for city council in a tight primary, where I fell short by 200 votes, just 1% of the turnout. Our message resonated with families in Soho, restaurant workers in Chinatown, and artists on the Lower East Side. We brought together neighbors who only lived a quarter mile away from each other. But what we started outlived Election Day, and the coalition we helped build achieved major victories. Within months of the primary, on a winter night, tenants at 85 Bowery came home from work to find out that they were being evicted. Their tenant association called me, since many of them did not speak English, so I organized to support them. Members of this club, like Janine, Emily, Richard, and others, stood with them during 2 hunger strikes. Tenants who get evicted in New York City almost never get to go back home. But after 9 months, and with the power of our community, they were able to finally return. Soon after, the plans to build 4 luxury towers and 2 bridges was moving forward. I fought them in my city council campaign, but now we had to figure out how to stop them without the support of our council member. We collected 5,000 signatures and delivered these petitions straight to City Hall. Our elected officials ignored our voices, but residents won a lawsuit to stop the construction. When the mayor announced to build a mega jail in Chinatown, our council members said there was nothing we could do about it. I founded a local group, NUBC, to educate residents from Tribeca to Chinatown about how this will harm our health and how building new jails would not stop the mass incarceration. I led the largest march through Chinatown in over 50 years, with thousands of residents demanding no new jails. Just a few weeks ago, our lawsuit won and sent the city back to the drawing board. These campaigns were born of dire circumstances, but we won because of relentless hope. We proved that when people from all across this district come together, fight together, we can achieve something that's unimaginable. The past 6 months have changed our community drastically. It could make the city council race look really small. But where COVID impacts us the most, it's right in our homes and in our neighborhoods. And that's where your city council member can make the biggest difference. Our plan for recovery focuses on 3 main issues: land use, our standard of living, and climate change. First, I want to implement community-based land use policy. Because of the virus, many New Yorkers are behind on rent. Now, more than ever, we need to reclaim affordability in our neighborhoods and stop eviction. My top priority is to pass the Chinatown Working Group plan so that we could create permanent and deep affordable housing. Second, I'm running to improve our quality of life. As the city budget tightens, we cannot be cutting essential services like sanitation, education, and transportation. We must invest in ACE, which hires formerly homeless people to clean streets. We must provide free Wi-Fi for all students, and we must expand our busways and bike lanes to rethink how we commute. And third, we can't be stumbling from crisis to crisis. We must locally address climate change. If Hurricane Sandy hit again tomorrow, the only part of our district that would be protected is Battery Park. I remember when Sandy, the water levels reached the 2nd floor of certain buildings, and nobody from Congress to council has stepped up to to really fight for a comprehensive resiliency plan. I'm ready to fill in that leadership void. My team has already done the work that our council office should be doing. We deliver food to seniors in NYCHA, partnered with DID to fundraise for PPEs for home attendants, connected women-owned businesses with local banks to apply for PPP loans, and hosted free COVID testing sites with Mike Bunyan to ensure that immigrants' communities get the services that they need.
30 seconds,
Tonight,
Chris.
I'm asking for your vote and your endorsement. Because when we're alone, we start losing hope. But when we're together, we realize no one needs to give us power. We have it in our own hand. The next few years will be difficult, but if we organize, unite, and we have a plan for our district, we already proven there is nothing we can't accomplish. Thank you for having me tonight. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks,
Sue?
Chris. Our first question comes from Emily. Go ahead, Emily.
Great, thanks so much. Chris, you spoke a lot about overdevelopment downtown. Can you explain your position and your involvement at the 250 Water Street site in the South Street Seaport?
Yes, thank you, Emily. From the very beginning, when Howard Hughes proposed to build a mega tower in the Seaport, I was out there with parents, with community activists, with residents of Southbridge opposing this tower. Not only we shouldn't be developing huge towers in a historic district, what's underneath the land is contaminated and will threaten kids at 2 nearby schools. I've organized, I've been a part of those meetings since the very beginning, and we need a council member that's going to support parents and not push back against them.
Thanks, Chris. Can I just say that we've had people ask if you could just address upzoning Soho and NoHo and also the homeless shelter in FiDi, just to be sure everybody gets a chance.
Yeah, I don't think we should upzone Soho and NoHo. I think one of the things people forget about upzoning a neighborhood is the amount of displacement it causes. Those tenants at 85 Bowery were only a few blocks away from Soho. And so if we go and develop this whole neighborhood, what are the consequences of the Lower East Side and Chinatown, especially since we don't have a comprehensive land use policy to save them? So I'm against upzoning Soho and NoHo. Regarding the homelessness issue in FiDi, this is an ongoing problem that's been a problem for years. DHS does this all the time. They transfer human men, women, children from homeless shelter to hotels throughout our city without anyone knowing. As a council member, you can actually legislate to make sure that they're more transparent, that the community has more of a heads up, so we could plan professionally, successfully to make sure that everyone is served. Right now, FiDi has a huge homeless problem, but our councilwoman isn't working with Department of Social Services to actually address that issues. I think we should have a homeless shelter in FiDi. It's the only community board that doesn't have one. But we have to make sure that we address the issue locally and be proactive about it and not reactive.
Thank you, Chris. Aaron actually had a follow-up question about the city's response to and recovery from COVID-19.
Hi, everyone. Aaron Foldenauer here. Hi, Chris. Good to see you. I guess you're the cleanup batter tonight, and no one's really addressed in detail the city's response to the pandemic. So we have a situation where the city's facing billions in budget deficits. We're losing jobs. Office towers, including those in District 1, are maybe 10% occupied. So there are a lot of serious questions that the city needs to address. And I just wanted to get one candidate's perspective on it, and I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I believe the mayor has dropped the ball in preparing even a response to COVID, whether it comes to our schools, whether it comes to homeless shelter, where it comes to affordable housing. But even if there's a budget crisis, I think we still have to think bold. I think climate change is the answer. It will create thousands of green jobs and stimulate our economy while protecting some of the most important parts of our city, like FIDI, the Lower East Side, Chinatown. And sorry, I'm a little biased when I call it the most important part of the city. But yeah, we have an opportunity here. Every crisis that New York City has faced has always been a chance for opportunity. We need a city council candidate that would not only keep the mayor accountable, but has a vision to make sure that we can build stronger, better than ever before.
Thanks, Chris. Trevor Holland had a question about Two Bridges. Trevor, go ahead.
Hi, it's the same question I had posed to Gigi. I'm sure you were listening, and it has to do with the Two Bridges development. You've often said that you support the entire Chinatown Working Group plan, which all residents do. However, the Two Bridges area is burning right now, and it's on fire, and it needs help. Our local groups have put forward a plan in city planning to basically prevent these towers and allow for more scaled development. What is your position on the Two Bridges Special District, and will you support the Two Bridges District independently, because it's now in city planning and we really only got about 2 years left to get this through?
Yeah, when we even look at, so I believe that we have to implement the Chinatown Working Group in its entirety. The problem when you focus with one area over the other, it puts other areas at risk. And so I think, I would support your rezoning with the whole rest of the Chinatown Working
But the
Group.
problem is, if you resort the whole plan, you have to start all over again, which will take about 4 years. Even with the legal case, if we win, they can still develop. And the judges have basically said the only thing you can do is rezone the area. We currently have an application in city planning. If we reset that clock, it'll be too late. So I know what you're saying about supporting the whole plan, but if we go back and we try and do the plan, we're talking 5 to 6 years before it gets to a point of where it can be passed by city planning. If the developer,
Trevor, I think the question's clear. Let Chris answer.
I don't think it would take 5 years. I think if we had a city council member that made this issue their #1 priority, which is my #1 priority, I think we could get this through city planning fairly quickly. We've seen large-scale rezonings throughout the city get addressed within 2 years. And so my first action as a council member is to make sure that we can update the Chinatown Working Group plan and pass it as quickly as possible.
2 years is too late.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Jill Goodkind, would you mind asking your question?
Sure, thank you. This district has a lot of 9/11 survivors who are now coming down with disproportionately high illnesses, cancers, even deaths. Do you have any plans or thoughts on how to better serve this community, which really is kind of always put on the back burner?
Yeah, my dad actually uses the 9/11 fund. He had cancer. Because of the contamination. He used to work at JNR Music World. For those of you who are new to the district, it was like the location to get anything from CDs to computers to your vacuum. So for me, this is personal. I think we need a council office that can reach out to every single resident that was living or working or even commuting around that area in that time and make sure that they know what's available for them. And if we need more funding for it, and our federal government refuses to do it, the city has to step up and address this. A lot of these first responders risk their lives to save folks. We got to make sure that as a city, as elected officials, that we step up to save them as well.
I just want to clarify that I'm talking also about residents who often sort of get put on the back burner, with all due respect to the first responders.
Yeah, I agree with residents too. And I think, if it's not moving faster enough, the city council could be used as an advocating position. And so making this a priority, for me it is, because I know it's my dad, but it could also be me a few years down the line. So I'm with you and Joe in fighting for this.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question, Chris. Mariama, James, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask about Chris's position on, I'm really interested in all of the candidates, but we have Chris here, his position on policing in New York City and or defunding.
Yeah.
Chris, you have 50 seconds left.
Okay. I was the first candidate to say that we need to defund the police, especially by $1 billion at the very least. When you look at how the NYPD has increased its budget in the past 3 years, it's been by $1 billion. In 2014, our city was the safest city. And so why did we continue to invest in policing? So I believe in defunding and making sure that those funds go to our communities, go to summer youth programs, go to after school programs, and social services program. I think it has to be done. And as your next city council person, I'll make that a priority on how I vote for the budget.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate you being here. Please put your contact information and website in the chat. And thank you everyone for joining us. We're now going to move to the next portion of the program, which is the member vote. But before we do, I again want to thank everybody for joining, and those of you who need to get off the event, leave the event because you're not a member, that could easily be remedied by becoming a voting member of DID, and you can be a part of the next part of this event next time around. So didnyc.org/membership. Come on and join us. There's so much to do